Trish Toby with WARC reporting to you live from Westchester, New York, where there appears to be some sort of mutant menace on the loose.
Hey, I'm Pat Reber.
And I'm Matt Ockamp.
And welcome to Mutant Menace.
Hooray! This is a podcast where we talk about the X-Men.
I think we did, I'm pretty sure last week we did the, pretending to be public radio announcers.
Well, it makes sense because we come in so soft with that jazzy piano riff by Croves Wilson.
I know. And the melodic line reading from Julia Selly, of course.
But it's funny because we are not, that's not our tone at all. like, hey, give us something absolutely chill so that right afterwards we can go bonkers and blast people's ears off.
That's right. We hit that much harder after the theme song.
Yeah, it gets us all hyped up.
If we played the real X-Men theme song and then you heard this voice, it would be boring.
Yeah, exactly.
But now it's filled with excitement. Every beat.
Also, just every X-Men podcast uses the X-Men themes. It's because it's such a good song.
It's a perfect song.
Anybody who's making a thing about the X-Men is like, well, we got to use the X-Men theme song. It's like, yeah, you do. Unfortunately, we can't all.
Matt, I've told you this before, but I have a distinct memory of being in high school. You and I went to the same high school and attended the same punk shows at the same local venues.
Don't dox me.
You were in a punk rock band as lead guitarist, I believe. I remember being at one of those shows. Somebody, I think your bassist, broke a string, so it had to be replaced, and we were all waiting. And so you said, to kill time, here's the X-Men theme. And then you played the riff slowly but perfectly on the high up on the neck of your guitar.
Did it get a good reaction?
It got a good reaction from me. I think the crowd had started socializing already.
Yeah. Well,
you know that moment at a show when there's some equipment failure and it has to be fixed, and it's a local show, so nobody's hooked on your every word, and the crowd just kind of, you lose them.
Yeah, like any local art event, everybody's just waiting for the thing to be over to hang out and socialize. Like you go to a comedy show and you're just sitting there like, when do I get to talk to my friend?
This is local art, of course, not please don't do that when you go to see famous comedians.
Well, you shouldn't talk over the performer anyway, but there is this sort of like building tension of
oh my God.
This is making me feel social. Please be over so I can talk to my friend. Even if you're enjoying it. Yeah.
You and I have done comedy for years.
You wouldn't know it by this show.
Oh boy. How many times have you seen an audience member at a comedy show mistakenly think that it is a conversation?
Oh, Jesus Christ. Just way too many. Like massively amount.
It's unbelievable. Like, I know we used to run shows that encouraged some audience participation, so we would see
that was our sort of way of getting in front of it, too, right?
Yeah.
We
expected it so we could play with it, but we saw a lot more of it than you usually would because we kind of welcomed it. But, like, you and I have both hosted stand-up shows or even just gone to see stand-up shows where I would say just under half of the stand-up shows I've been to, someone in the audience thought that the comedian was talking to them and inviting them to answer their questions.
Yeah. I wonder, I have a couple thoughts about that. Sometimes I wonder if that's because of a lack of understanding and thinking that maybe, dealing with hecklers, that's part of what's fun about going to see a comedian, which it's not. If anybody says that, you need to be, if you're going to be a comedian, you got to learn to deal with hecklers. No, that's like saying, if you're going to be a firefighter, you got to learn to accept that there's arsonists on your block. No, there shouldn't be arsonists.
If you're going to be a banker, you gotta accept that people are going to commit fraud.
Somebody's gonna rob you with a gun sometimes. It's just part of your job. If you don't know what to do when a person points a gun at your face, then maybe you're in the wrong line of work, banker. People don't say that, but they say that about comedians. So that's the one thing I think. The other thing is I think there's like the social awkwardness of feeling like you're being talked to, because that's a stage performer's job, is to make everybody feel like they are the person being targeted. And this feeling, this like maybe growing sense of unease in that person, like,
they fell for it.
Should I? And then eventually they're just like, the person's like, have you guys ever been to Hawaii? And yes.
I have been to Hawaii.
I have been to Hawaii.
It's nice. It's nice.
It's nice. I like it there. Yeah. Have you ever been to Hawaii and seen those guys who... No, I haven't. I haven't seen them.
I have.
Like the comedian's then supposed to say, oh, okay. And then do a different joke.
I have, as you know, a tattoo from one of our comedy shows that we did for a long time.
Yeah.
Very proud of it. I was referred to the tattoo shop by a friend, somebody that worked on the show with us. I love the tattoo. It's very, it's close to my heart, but the guy that gave
it's very
it to
far
me,
from your heart. I'll say that.
It's, yeah, that's fair.
But but it's close to your heart.
But it's close to my heart. The tattoo artist, who was generally a great guy, told me a story when he found out that this was for our comedy show about the one comedy show he's ever been. He said, I went out to Los Angeles. I went to the UCB theater. He said, have you ever heard of that? Which
already,
yes,
like, uh-oh.
Of course. And he said, yeah, I went to the show. It's called Ass something, Ass. And I said Ass Cat, which if you don't know, this is maybe a little more inside comedy, but Ass Cat is a regular improv show that took place at the UCB in LA that just was legendary for having the founders of the UCB theater, which includes Amy Poehler, and then all of their celebrity friends, as well as just talented improvisers that hadn't gotten their break yet.
It still happens, and it's just like their most veteran improvisers. It is the top of their current talent at all times.
This guy sets the tone by letting me know that he had a 40 in each hand walking into the theater.
Oh, God.
Interrupts the show several times to the point where Will Arnett has to stop the show and say, you are out of line, leave the theater right now. And right. I guess they get into a brief verbal spat when Amy Poehler steps up and says, okay, everybody calm down, and turns right to him, the tattoo artist, and says, are you going to be able to behave for the rest of the show? And he goes, yes. And she says, okay, then you can stay and let's just get back to the show. And then he was silent for the rest of the show. He finished his 40s in silence, and the show went on. And then he ends that story with, yeah, that's my experience with comedy.
Oh my God. That showing up to a comedy show with 2 40s in hand, like, this is going to be a party.
Yeah.
You're already, hey man, this night is not about you. We have to start, like, we should start there. Like, that should be written over every comedy theater door. Hey, this night is not about you. Come watch somebody else.
And it's an improv show. Like, I can understand if it was a stand-up comedy show, there's a bit of maybe a different crowd expectation there, but these are not confrontational people. These are theater nerds that you're yelling at.
Right. You're not watching somebody, in that point, you're not watching somebody who is making it like they're talking directly to you. You're basically watching a play and being like, hey, me too. I've also been to New York.
It's like yelling at the Music Man. Don't trust him. He's lying.
I love you too, Juliet. Juliet, I agree. I agree that you remind me of a summer's day. Or worse, I don't think she's that pretty.
Jesus. Matt, I gotta ask.
Yeah.
Did you do anything X-Men related this week?
I did. Well, I was going to tell you about one thing specifically, but then I had an incident just before we were recorded where I might have an X-Men power. Might have a mutant power. So
Tell me all about it.
I was getting a glass down from my cabinet when a different glass fell. And I caught it on my arm.
Okay.
And it shattered on my arm.
Whoa. Oh, there's a... Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, there's blood.
Are you okay, buddy?
Yeah, I'm fine. But it shattered on my arm. But I guess...
Yeah.
The fact that I got cut is a good indicator that it wasn't because of my own super strength or invulnerability.
I'm sorry, pal. Did it hurt? Are you okay?
It didn't hurt at the time. It was just very confusing. And I had to pick glass out of my arm. Like a real badass.
All right.
This is what I was going to tell you about.
You're very brief.
I got a book called Comic Creators on X-Men. It's an out-of-print book that is very... It cost more than I wanted it to. Let's say that. But it is Tom DeFalco, former writer and editor of... Not very good writer, but former editor of Marvel Comics.
Yeah. Good editor.
You might like him because he was a big Spider... He was like a big part of Spider-Man's...
Sure was.
But anything he's ever done that's been X-Men related has been some of the worst comics I've ever read. So he interviews... this was back in 2006, I believe. And he interviews just a ton of people who worked on the X-Men, including... relevant to our where we currently are in the podcast, Stan Lee and Roy Thomas.
Oh.
So one of the things I do want to tell you is we've been right about so much of the stuff we've said about Roy Thomas.
Oh, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
Great.
Not only did Stan say, oh, Roy Thomas was just the guy I put on every book that I didn't want to write anymore. I'm paraphrasing, but also Roy Thomas is like, I didn't get the whole mutant thing at the time, at least in his first go around, and he wasn't too excited about the X-Men, and he specifically didn't want it to be about mutants anymore. He just wanted it to be a book like the Avengers.
He just
and
wanted
that's
to
why
tell
he brought in super
fucking science fiction tales.
Right. He talks about how that's why he brought in the super adaptoid and the puppet master and stuff. He thinks that some of these were Stan's ideas, but this is another thing he said. He believes, at least, he's the first person to write Spider-Man besides Stan Lee. When he put Spider-Man in the background of the Puppet Master issue?
Yes, we was foiling the bank robbery.
I don't know that that's true. It's just what Roy Thomas says about it.
Interesting. Wait, no, because they ask him there to join their team, and he's like, dude, I just turned down the Avengers. Although maybe that took place in...
Stan Lee was writing the Avengers.
Stan Lee Avengers. Oh, shit.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So he believes he's the first person to write Spider-Man besides Stan Lee, and then it was his idea to put Spider-Man in issue 35. So that we were wrong about.
Along Came a Spider?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
But yeah, he wanted to get them away from just fighting mutants. Another thing I learned is that the Factor 3 was supposed to be like a cabal of James Bond villains, which it's a little hard to get. But but that shitty name, Factor 3, is about...
Factor 3 is very James Bond, right?
Well, the idea is that in James Bond and James Bond-like shows, it was the U.S. versus the Soviets.
Yeah, they wanted to be the third factor
in the equation, which really comes into play in what we're talking about today.
Yeah, sure does. Once we get to it. Because you have yet to ask me if I've done anything X-Men.
Yeah. I'll ask you, and then you'll say no, and then we'll.
That would have been a great segue.
Okay, what did you do that's X-Men related? This.
Not much. I did. I did spend the weekend in New York City.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Did you see any superheroes?
Maybe. I wouldn't know unless they were in
Oh, okay.
uniform.
If you saw them in their like civilian garb. Okay.
Yeah. I was looking up for Spider-Man, but
Is that what do you do that every time you visit New York City?
Yeah. How often do you think in the Marvel 616 universe the average Manhattan resident sees Spider-Man? Like actually sees him swing by either maybe a window or just as they're walking on the street?
I think if you live in Manhattan all the time, right?
Okay.
If you live elsewhere, it's kind of rare. But if you live in Manhattan, you're seeing superheroes nonstop because you got Stark Industries, you got the Avengers Tower, which I guess become the same thing most of the time. They're the same thing. You got Four Freedoms Plaza.
Sure.
That's where Spider-Man spends like most of his time, even though Spider-Man lives in Queens. He spends most of his time in Manhattan, right?
Yeah. He takes the train into Manhattan and then swings around.
I think if you live in Manhattan, it's just superheroes all the fucking time. Whereas the Power Pack lived in Manhattan. Everyone lived in Manhattan.
Yeah, but I mean Spider-Man specifically.
Okay.
I wouldn't. Like, I see Iron Man, I'm like, oh boy, there's another billionaire soaring through the sky.
I bet you'd see. Definitely once a year. Everybody sees Spider-Man at least once a year, and some people see him. Right. Some people see him like weekly. Other people see him a couple times. Like it's okay. I would say it's about how often when me and you were both living around and doing comedy in Westchester, Pennsylvania, is about as often as we saw Bam Margera.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
Right. Like he was always around there somewhere, not where you were at any given time, usually.
Speaking of Westchester, Matt, wait, here's our segue. Shut up.
I'm just saying, much more exciting to see Spider-Man than fucking Bam Margera. We have to sneak that in case somebody is like at home thinking, oh, cool, they lived where Bam Margera is. No, it's not cool. Not cool even a little bit.
No, Matt, Bam Margera is good again on the internet.
Oh, I didn't know.
Yeah, he's...
He wasn't the entire 20 years we lived in and around Westchester, Pennsylvania.
Yeah. Speaking of Westchester.
Yes.
Do you want to tell us, Matt, about what's going on in Westchester, New York in issue number 38 of X-Men?
I don't even know if issue number 30, it doesn't even take place in Westchester, New York. But I'll tell you about it anyway. Issue 38, The Sinister Shadow of Doomsday. Edited by Stan Lee, written by Roy Thomas, drawn by Don Heck, your boy. Inked by George Bell, lettered by L.P. Gregory. I don't know either of those last two.
Don, please don't call Don Heck my guy.
He's your guy. He's your boy.
He is a Marvel legend.
And you love him. He's your favorite one.
That doesn't include any commentary on his art.
Picking up from the last issue, the X-Men have just escaped Factor 3's traps and are face-to-face with the Mutant Master on a big video screen. Beast detects a bomb in the floor with his talented Tootsies, and they flee in a Factor 3 flying saucer.
They're all obsessing over his feet, but he gives them a solid, there's no time for this now.
The first time he hasn't wanted to talk, like he's allowed to talk about his feet, but there's no time for you to talk about his feet.
They are getting really into it.
Changeling, meanwhile, argues with Mutant Master about how the X-Men were able to escape, and we learn a bunch of things about him and his plan. Apparently, Mutant Master is immobile, relying on Changeling to bring all the mutants together, and Mutant Master keeps everyone in line with a series of weapons that he seems to control mentally. The plan is to spark a nuclear war between the US and Russia, as if there's some kind of third factor in the Cold War, so that mutants can rule over the resultant wasteland. Yet, Changeling is worried that he's simply trading the oppression of humanity for slavery under a dictator. The X-Men pick up Factor 3's radio signals in Eastern Europe and Washington and split up to investigate using Factor 3's ridiculously fast flying egg-shaped saucers. Angel, Beast, and Marvel Girl fly to the USSR and find Vanisher and the Blob there with a small squadron of masked henchmen planning to blow up a gathering of military leaders. Beast fights a bunch of military guards while Angel and Jean fight Blob and Vanisher. His absolute favorite thing.
That's
Holy
right.
shit, I get to fight
Beast
military.
gets to just solo a squadron of military.
Cyclops and Iceman go directly to some U.S. military base and try to convince some general to disarm all his bombs. When he doesn't immediately agree, they run out and start trying to destroy every nuclear warhead in the place while the army shoots at them. Back in the USSR, Jean telekinetically creates a bubble of Vanisher's knockout gas around the Blob to knock him unconscious, and Vanisher teleports away, leaving the two X-Men to fight the remaining hooded henchmen, which turn out to be androids. When they head to warn the Soviet generals of the bomb, they get mistaken for assassins. Angel and Jean, along with Blob. I'm the Bob! Watch out for me.
Bob Drake.
Along with the Blob and Beast, get thrown in prison, leaving us with several dangling questions. First, from Jean, why did Mutant Master cover the robot faces with masks? Changeling, am I trading one tyrant for another? And Professor X, how can you rule over a nuclear wasteland? Won't you all be killed too?
And that's the end?
Yeah.
Are we going to get any conclusion in the next issue?
No, it says all done. No, it will not be continued, it says. No, it's to be continued.
Wow.
This issue, it feels like a lot happens and not a lot happens, right?
Well, here's the thing, Matt. Yes.
Okay, the plot doesn't move forward very much.
Right. And in the last issue, they essentially start and end in the same place, right? The final issue that we read last time, they were going after Factor 3, they get trapped, and then they escape it, they fight a bunch of guys, they get re-trapped.
Yeah.
It happens again here. They escape their trap, they fight a bunch of guys, they just end up in a life-threatening situation at the end. It's another to be continued, which this is, don't get me wrong, this is a very, a big effort, this 5-issue arc that we're in here. But yeah, they're just kind of starting and stopping at the same place and making the issues slightly shorter so they can continue it onto. Do you think that the Factor 3 saga was selling well, and that's why they wanted to make these a little shorter, start to fit 2 stories per issue, and stretch it to, I think it's a 5th Factor 3 issue?
I would say the opposite. I think X-Men's probably not selling well at this time, so they're trying to entice readers in. They're trying to do 2 things. First, entice readers in by also putting backup origin stories, which we'll get to in these issues. But second of all, make the X-Men less of a workload on their talent by giving them less to write and less to draw. So like, okay, we're going to keep putting out X-Men even though it's selling badly, but we don't want you to spend all your time on it. So we're going to put a bunch of guys on this instead of just 2.
Yeah, that's fair. Especially with Don Heck's fucking very busy art.
So he's not your guy. I think I don't know if I blame maybe the inker here, George Bell, because I do think Don Heck's art gets better in the next couple issues.
Yes, yeah, I'll get to that.
Okay, but you're blaming Don Heck. I'm saying that I think maybe George Bell's to blame.
All right, yeah, fucking George Bell. I hate that guy.
Though there are some, I could see there are some scenes where it is a little hard to tell what's going on because there's just so much shit in the panel.
Yes, there is a lot of action, and it's just not like
Well,
even the very first page, the splash panel that we open with
yeah.
is just Don Heck's reinterpretation of the final panel from the issue before it. Like they are essentially just a different camera angle on the same setup, repeating the same words, just redrawn by Don Heck, and characters are in slightly different positions. And you can see the clear contrast there. Like Don is really just getting used to drawing the X-Men here.
Yeah, because in the last issue it was Ross Andrew. But it's, I think the way he draws like machinery is really confusing.
Well, he's a robot man. He's a robo man.
Yeah, but so if he's a robo man, then why is his machinery all so confusing? Like there's these panels. There's this panel where Changeling is working some sort of machinery, doing something that's kind of, he's standing before a towering radio generator, it says, but it just looks like a bunch of lines.
Yeah. I mean, this is what you asked for when you asked for Don Heck. He loves a big, complicated machine. He's one of the co-creators of Iron Man, right?
Right.
But before that, he was doing science fiction pulp comics. He was just drawing robots and monsters and freaks and strange mysteries all over the place.
But Jack Kirby was that kind of guy also, and Jack Kirby's machines were so much better.
Yeah, well,
but I guess it is
Don
fair
Heck's
to say,
an ideas guy.
I can't remember how we felt about Werner Roth's crazy machines. Were we up hype on them? I feel like those weren't as detailed.
Yeah, Werner Roth can do no wrong. Still batting 1,000.
A thing I love about, speaking of weird machines, is how Roy Thomas has to call everything the weirdest names ever. Right? Like,
oh my God.
Somebody shoots lasers, and instead of just being like, I shot them, somebody has to say, I shot my ray blasts at them. Or like, or like, people don't talk normally, and I know this is in all comics, but people like go out of their way to mention the technology they're using. They're like, if instead of saying like, I'm going to fly away, you'd be like, I'm going to use my Repulso jet helicopter engine to fly out of here. And it's like, it makes me wonder about Roy Thomas's just like home life, right? Like, does he call a spoon a soup lifto device? Does he call the shower? He's like, hey, honey, I just got to hop in the hydro blaster to clean my human body before we go.
I'm dying, Matt, at your note here that just says, hey, honey, can you bring me a soup lifto device? He adds a brand new one here, too. He calls it the predictoscope. And they don't use it. They just mention that they have one.
They have a predictoscope. What is a predictoscope supposed to do? Does it look into the future?
I think it tells the future. I think it like...
Why not use that all the time?
Yeah, it seems like it's not fully accurate. It seems like there's some flaw in the design that only allows it.
It's funny, you were talking about how Hank no time for that now's everybody about his own feet, but he does it about everything, right? Like he breaks when they meet the Soviets. He no time for that now's them about to be like destroyed by Factor 3 and needing to warn them about, but he uses still so many words. He's the Beast, so he doesn't just say, it's like he doesn't just no time for that now. He's like, hello, my pulchitudinous pals. Me and my Maleficent men want to invade your... Like,
oof.
He's... I'm no Roy Thomas.
It's not an easy voice to improv in.
No, he can't improv it. But he's still just like... he's speaking so much for a guy telling you, I don't have time to tell you what's going on. I think he did, buddy. I think he did. Just use fewer words.
I love, as always, and we mentioned it in the recap, but Hank gets to do his favorite thing, beat up the military. It's an Eastern European military, so he doesn't even have to feel guilty about beating up U.S. military. Cyclops also gets to fight the military. It's the U.S. military, which is his favorite thing. He hates the U.S. military. And one of them, I'm going to get mad about this. I'm the entire episode, Matt. One of them says, Holy Hannah. The troops are saying Holy Hannah now, which seems to be what triggers Cyclops to attack them. That's the last straw for him.
Cyclops says a weird Holy Hannah in an upcoming issue. But yeah, you're going to have a real issue with all this. I
think it's Bobby says he feels like Horatio at the bridge.
It's Angel. Angel
says it.
Redeeming himself by being brave after that issue where he was like, if we save these people, we're going to give away our identities, so maybe we shouldn't. In this issue, he's redeeming himself by being like, Jean, stay back. I'm going to fight all these Soviet troops and die. Or it's the androids. I can't remember which one. But he says Horatio at the bridge, which is just Roy Thomas getting a literary reference wrong.
This tortured genius.
So what he's referring to is a poem by Thomas Babington Macaulay that is about...
Thomas Babington Macaulay.
Which is about a story about a Roman soldier who was fighting the Etruscans? I don't know the exact details.
The Etruscans.
He was fighting somebody on behalf of Rome, and to stop them from getting to Rome proper, they collapse a bridge, and Horatius Cocles, I guess his name was, supposedly sort of single-handedly holds them off while they destroy the bridge behind him. Okay. So that's the reference, but his name's not Horatio, and the poem is not called Horatio at the bridge. Roy Thomas just...
And also, it is when they're fighting androids, Jean just walks around him and takes out the androids instead.
He's like, stay back. I'll handle it. I'll sacrifice myself. And Jean's like, it's fine, dude. I actually got this one.
Okay, I have notes for Roy Thomas and notes for Stan Lee.
Okay.
On this one, number one, I'm going to read you a Roy Thomas narration here that is just supposed to say, now let's check in on Professor X. At this pulsating point, faithful one, we regret that we must momentarily interrupt our sense-shattering narrative. But we thought that after these many issues, it was time that we heard from a decidedly immobilized Professor X. Shut up. Just take us there.
Yeah.
This is on a panel where we're just looking at Professor X. We know. Anyway, Stan Lee is getting a little reckless with his editor's notes in this issue. He's not even taking shots at Roy Thomas anymore.
Yeah.
He's not critiquing the overly poetic Shakespearean narration. Yeah. He's just, we cut to a shot of the bomb that Jean and Warren are trying to stop. And he adds a note that's like, just so you know, we wanted to make sure everybody saw the bomb. That's why this panel's here. Thanks for reading. Stan, Smiling Stan.
That it is a ridiculously written editor's note, but I was glad for that editor's note because I could not tell what that was a fucking picture of.
That's fair.
Okay, so at the end of this issue, there is a secondary, like a backup story, as we were referring to.
Yes.
It's by Roy Thomas and Werner Roth, our pal, our guy. We love him. The story is called A Man Called X. It opens in an FBI office as two agents watch a TV news story of a riot breaking out over a mutant, and they decide they must investigate the mutant menace.
Mutant menace!
It's cut to Professor Xavier's house, where he's been a recluse ever since the Korean War. No, he hasn't.
Yes, he has.
No, he hasn't. No,
it says
he
it
hasn't.
right here in the comic. He's been
But
a recluse
he hasn't.
since the Korean War.
He had use of his legs in the Korean War. And then he went out adventuring for years, where he like overthrew a small nation's government. And as we'll find out in the future, had a whole shit ton of other adventures at this time. Like, had children at this time. Okay. He reads in the newspaper that the FBI will be investigating mutants, so he flies to Washington, D.C. to intervene. Using his telepathy to get past the guards, he ends up sitting in on Agent Fred Duncan and some other guy watching footage of a teenager using powerful red optic blasts to save a crowd from a falling industrial-sized air conditioner, and the crowd turning on the kid. They decide to find and investigate the kid when they discover Professor Xavier is already in the room with them. They try to just wheel him out of the room. They're like, oh, I know what'll take care of this guy. And they're going to wheel him out and he won't, and it won't move. They can't do it. And then they try to shoot him, but they can't pull the trigger. So instead, they agree to work with him on tracking down and training mutants. The end.
To be continued. Sort of.
Yeah, I don't think that one says to be continued, but it does. It does become continued.
Yeah, it's a little serialized. This is a neat little story to follow. It's got its own flaws, but it is the only Werner Roth X-Men art we're getting at this time, right?
Yes, I think so. I think it's a fun little story. It gives us a look into how Professor X decided to start the X-Men, and also a look into how he got the FBI on his side. But who the hell is this other guy?
Fred Duncan always has a crony. He's always got some other dude in the room with him. Well, I guess we've seen him twice now, but both times he's just had some other guy there that he's been like, excuse me, I have to talk to this bald man.
And I guess other people don't question him. Maybe he's high up enough. Yes.
See, I'm grappling with some timelines here because this is a flashback. But the fucking feds are saying "Holy Hannah."
Are they? I can't find this. I've been looking.
Fred Duncan pulls a gun on the professor.
Oh, he thinks. Okay, I see it now.
Thinks to himself, "Holy Hannah." So we know that the professor. Well, maybe he picked it up from. Okay, maybe he picks it up from Fred Duncan, reading his mind in this moment.
Okay.
Passes it on to Bobby. He's just frustrated with Bobby one day and says, "Holy Hannah, Bobby, get your shit together." And Bobby's like, "Ooh." And then he starts saying it. Cyclops picks it up. The government agents that are monitoring them start to pick it up. And that's how it's made its way to the Eastern European military. Yeah.
Because they are monitoring communications between the U.S. military, and the U.S. military starts saying it. So then the Eastern European military starts saying it. This is how a meme spreads.
Now, I don't want to start ranting about this, but do you think so? Right now, we are in the era of the Batman 60s television show. I think it's just completed like its first or second season. It is a huge hit, and Burt Ward is always saying, "Holy something Batman," right? And it's always unique to that situation. This is very sudden. The X-Men are not holy people. Do you think this is just an attempt to make fun of that, recapture that magic? Do you think Roy Thomas every time is like, he's got to say holy something, holy Hannah?
I can't even venture a guess.
All right. Thank you for indulging me.
I mean, it's going to come up again. I know we're going to talk about it more.
Yeah.
Because
right we are.
they say it a lot in this series of issues. Pat, do you want to tell me about issue 39, the fateful finale?
Yes. Yeah, I do. Issue 39, the fateful finale. Stan Lee enthusiastically endorses this Roy Thomas, Don Heck excitement-laden epic. We're not sure just what Vince Coletta, inker, and Artie Simek, letterer, think of it, though. This is a gag that they go back to. They're trying to be too cute here. Release date October 10th, 1967. Cover date December of 67. Iceman and Cyclops press past the attacking U.S. military to find that Factor 3 was intending to vent some kind of gas through the air filtration system. They freeze the pipes when suddenly big tentacles burst through the walls to trap them. Mastermind steps out to brag about it, and that immediately clues the boys into the fact that these tentacles are illusions. They escape, only to find Unis is there also. Back in jail, Jean recovers enough to use her telekinesis and floats the sleeping security guard over to the cell so that Beast can grab him and choke him out. And then Jean telekinetically grabs the keys and gets them out. They escape, bursting into the room just as some ambiguous Eastern European leaders are about to declare war on the U.S. To try and restore peace. Angel starts punching everyone. Marvel Girl discovers the bomb in a suitcase and is about to steal it away when the Blob shows up and starts punching everyone. Beast punches him. Cut back to Cyclops and Iceman, who are punching and being punched by Unis and Mastermind. Cyclops has Iceman create a bunch of ice and melts it with his force-based, not heat-based, I-beams and creates an icy mist. Yeah, very important. An icy mist around the room to cover their escape. Another fucking sick move. They move.
If it would work, if you could melt with force rather than with heat, it would be a sick move.
What? No, Matt. This is awesome. Iceman creates a big mound of ice, and Scott blasts it as hard as he can to essentially create like a snowdrift. You ever been driving and the snow, like the wind blows over some loose snow and it just like, you can barely see what's ahead of you?
Okay, so they call it a mist, which made me think that Scott was melting the snow.
No.
But I see what you're saying. He's just
mist.
Projecting the particles into the air.
Gotta say, there's a lot of weird fogs coming up, so buckle up.
Yeah, that's true.
Bobby and Scott move their goalposts from disarming every missile to prevent nuclear war to just neutralizing the gas so that I guess the military can remain in control of the base.
Yeah, this is really confusing.
This was added in the last minute here for sure. So they consider their mission a success.
Everybody's goals change during this, right? In the last issue, it was... we'll talk about it. Well, I think we'll talk about it at the end because I think we need to learn a little bit more about Mutant Master first.
Yeah. Back in Eastern Europe, Jean talks Blob out of holding onto the bomb, and Angel flies it up into the air where it explodes harmlessly in the immediate atmosphere.
Yeah.
This proves to the Eastern European generals that the X-Men were on the level, not actually trying to assassinate them, and they let them go. We cut to the Mutant Master, who is bummed that the X-Men foiled his plan and reveals that he let them go so that they'd be blamed for the attack rather than each nation blaming each other, which was the whole...
Yeah, what's going on here? What? Nothing. His whole plan falls. Okay, keep going.
He also reveals that he can't find Changeling, and that if Changeling knew his true plan, he'd try to stop him. He's doing a lot of internal, out loud monologuing.
Yeah.
All 5 X-Men meet up at Factor 3's base where they're confronted by Mutant Master, Blob, Vanisher, Mastermind, and Unis. They're about to all start punching when Professor X interrupts them and claims that the Mutant Master is the real enemy. Professor X starts grilling Mutant Master on why he sentenced the X-Men to the Oblivio Ray instead of death. Why did he let the X-Men escape? Why did he try to provoke a world war? But instead of answering, Mutant Master sicks an army of androids on everyone. The battle wakes Banshee up, who uses his powerful scream. Yeah, do you remember Banshee is also involved here? I completely forgot.
So cool. I love that Banshee is here.
He's been unconscious for 3 issues. He wakes up, he uses his powerful scream to destroy all the androids and start stripping away all the robotics off of the Mutant Master, revealing him to be a giant, weird green alien from the star sun Sirius. All the mutants team up to fight the alien. Then a second Professor X shows up and tells Jean to capture the first Professor X using telepathy. But before she can, the Mutant Master commits suicide. The evil mutants and the X-Men part as temporary allies. They just shake hands and forget about the international
they're like,
incidents.
Next time we meet, we'll kill each other. Bye.
And then the Changeling is... unclear.
Yeah.
To wrap it all up, the X-Men get home. Finally, Jean has a gift for them. They put on all new costumes that Jean made them herself. The end.
So, okay, so now that all the details are out, we got to talk about it. Mutant Master's original plan, as stated to us, was that he was trying to provoke a war between the U.S. and the Soviets, right?
Right.
He was trying to spark off the Cold War.
2 issues in a row, he let us know this was his ultimate plan.
Create a nuclear holocaust. So both of them were going to the leaders to say, like, hey, this is what's going to happen. You've got to not nuke each other. It's not the US's fault. It's not Russia's fault. Or whatever. USSR's fault at this point. But then, as I guess Roy Thomas is like, this is too complicated.
Punch.
Instead, it just becomes, actually, Factor 3 was just going to knock them out with knockout gas.
Here's how it
blow them up.
Here's how it all kicks off.
Yeah.
Hank busts into a room full of Eastern European, Russian-speaking generals and reveals that he can also speak Russian and just starts saying, like, hey, we mean you no harm. You guys are in great danger. There's a bomb here. They're surprised. Yeah. And before they can really react, Warren flies in the window, says, I don't speak Russian, but I know what this means, and starts punching them all.
I know, they're like, hey, we've got to prevent World War III. Punch everyone.
Now, here is what I think happened to Scott and Bobby. I believe that, their initial plan was, let's destroy all of these nuclear warheads so that when Mutant Master's army takes over this military compound, they won't be able to launch them.
But that wasn't Mutant Master's plan. It wasn't to take over the compound. It was to assassinate the leaders so that the leaders would think, oh, this was the other country. Let's launch nukes
start launching. Right. Okay. So he was going to release poison gas into the nuclear missile command center,
where all the nuclear guys are.
Where all the men with their fingers on the button are. And they froze up the gas pipes, so now that doesn't work. I think this one's kind of reasonable. They should have started with this, just been like, hey, maybe we can. Yeah.
But then Mutant Master's like, hey, this was all part of my plan because I wanted the X-Men to be blamed for this. But if the X-Men were blamed for this, then neither country would launch their nukes and nothing would it wouldn't have happened.
Okay. I am giving him the benefit of the doubt here because he's an alien from the Star Sun Sirius. That the X-Men being blamed for it was kind of his contingency plan, right? He realized...
But he let them go. So it wasn't his contingency plan, it was plan number 1.
Did he actually let them go, though? It seems
that's what he said.
I know that's what he says, but he's struggling at that point. I think...
Oh, you think he's lying?
An unreliable narrator.
Okay. You think there's a lot of... you think there's nuance to this. You think this is a Kazuo Ishiguro subtle text.
That's right. Fucking Roy Thomas, tortured genius. Strikes again.
Okay, so that's the one thing that doesn't make sense. And then this end thing. and this is going to get more confusing over the next even fucking, I think, 20 issues. Where the feeling of what is about to happen here. Do you know this plot? Just
no.
We won't say it out loud, but do you know what's happening with the professor here?
No.
Okay. All right. Then I'm not going to reveal it, but this is going to, for about 20 issues, this is going to be confusing. Okay. So Changeling mimics the professor.
Mm-hmm.
And then the professor uses his telepathy to say to Jean, hey, I'm the real professor. That's Changeling. Get him. And then something happens and we never see the Changeling again. But Jean says in like just a random word balloon, like, oh, off panel, we got Changeling. What does she say? She says, what about the 5 evil mutants, Professor, including the restored Changeling? But all the evil mutants are standing there and Changeling's not there. So we don't see Changeling again. Professor X is the real Professor X because he used his telepathy, right?
Yes, that's how they deduce it. He telepathically says, capture the Professor X that I'm pointing at. And Jean says, oh, well, even if he's a shapeshifter, he can't mimic his telepathic abilities.
Right. So I think we should just note all of that. I think we should just keep that in our heads. That is what happened. That is what happened. That is what is said to have happened, is that Changeling turned into Professor X for seemingly no reason to tell them to do what Professor X would have told them to do anyway.
Yeah, he was helping them. I thought it was part of the plan.
Yeah.
But then, nothing ever came of it.
Okay. Okay, so here's Cyclops says, how in Holy Hannah?
He's back to his old habits.
He doesn't even just exclaim Holy Hannah. He's like, how in Holy Hannah?
Yeah, he's no longer just praying to Hannah. He is asking for foresight from Hannah. It's a dangerous path he's going down. Well, I think we get sort of a like hugging, here's what I learned today moment at the end where Professor X kind of shakes hands with the evil mutants saying like, hey, we know that we're typically enemies, but today we fought side by side to take down the mutant master. Good game, essentially.
Yeah.
Fucking these guys tried to cause an international. They tried to trigger World War III.
Yeah.
I get that he wants to like show some mutual respect and thank them for helping, but I think their crime outweighs the level of respect they're owed for what they did.
This is some end of Harry Potter ass shit where these guys didn't know. Redeem themselves, right? Like these guys did not, like the amount of bad these guys did does not mean that if in the last second they're like, all right, well, we'll help you get the really big bad guy. That doesn't make up for it. They're not now suddenly heroes.
Yeah, they should be probably tried at The Hague.
I know, right? But there is some political allegory here. Like we were talking about it last episode. What is Roy Thomas trying to say? And I think there's some more politics that kind of filter in this issue, right?
Yeah, sure.
There's this whole idea, which I think was important at the time and is even more important now, this idea of warning about charismatic leaders who take on, say, an activist's position just to gain power. Right? There was a lot of stuff that happened in the civil rights movement, right? Where people would sort of infiltrate and be like, I'm a civil rights leader and let's kill white people. And it was just to sort of lure civil rights activists into saying, yeah, let's do that. And then getting arrested. The same thing happened in the 2000s, like late 2000s, with people going to mosques and trying to recruit terrorists, right, and that actually being the FBI. And why it's super relevant right now, I think, is the amount of conservatives in the US jumping on the pro-Israel bandwagon.
Yes, and tying Israel to Jewish identity, which is very anti-Semitic in itself, but doing it just to exploit people who are tied to their Jewish identity.
And I can see this happening with people that I know, people that I okay, so recently I saw a friend, not a friend, an acquaintance, who is Jewish and has family in Israel and is very pro-Israel, who shared a Charlie Kirk video on his Facebook. And I had to comment and be like, Charlie Kirk is a man who believes that there is a shadowy Jewish conspiracy in the US that believes the Jewish dollars are going to fund cultural Marxism and overthrow the governments of, quote, white people, right?
Yeah.
That is what Charlie Kirk has been preaching in his with Turning Point USA for 10 years now. And now all of a sudden Charlie Kirk is reading the Torah to people at rallies, and actual liberal Jewish pro-Israel people are saying, yeah, Charlie Kirk's got a point. This is a guy who, Charlie Kirk wants you dead. Like, I guarantee Charlie Kirk wants you as a Jewish person dead. He just wants the Palestinians dead more.
Charlie Kirk subscribes to, and a lot of conservatives try to secretly subscribe to this theory that the Christian apocalypse will be triggered when all of the Jews are removed from other countries in the world and centralized in Israel.
Yes. I'm getting us into some really heavy territory, but I think like that is what this story evokes for me of course, in the silliest of ways. An alien is like, hey, I'm a mutant too, and I'm all about mutant stuff, and I know mutant stuff, and us mutants should rule the world. And he's just doing that to bring about literally the apocalypse so that aliens can, I don't know, whatever, take over.
He said his mission was to conquer a world.
And literally that is what a guy like Charlie Kirk is doing.
I think the trans movement deals with this a lot too, right? Where people are, in the name of feminism, becoming extremely anti-trans, or in the name of gay rights, saying trans people are trying to take our rights from us so they can have them. Like, stuff like that is really
right. And you end up with people who, again, aren't pro-women, pretending that they're taking a feminist position to eradicate trans people, and figuring, well, once we get this done, then I'll take care of all these women who I accidentally supported.
Exactly.
Anyway, so I don't think Roy Thomas is conscious of this level of depth that he is brushing up against, but I think that this is a salient point that has been important for at least 100 years, if not for all time. This idea of a person taking on a fake cause to promote their own agenda.
Yeah, for insidious purposes.
Right. And so, like, where a guy like Magneto is a legitimate believer in...
Yeah.
Depending on the era, either mutant supremacy or mutant exclusionism.
A true fanatic.
Exactly. All right. Anyway, that's our political rant for this episode.
Hey.
Also, I should say, this issue had a backup story about Cyclops' origin. The next few issues we're going to tackle them all at once.
Yeah, we'll get to it. Hold on to your butts.
Stop freaking out! Because instead, I'm going to tell you about issue 40, The Mark of the Monster.
My God, buckle up.
The X-Men are training in the Danger Room when Professor X calls them to the study, where he's working on a secret project with Marvel Girl. He had apparently recently intercepted a radio broadcast about the actual Frankenstein's monster.
The real Frankenstein's monster.
Being found frozen in ice in the Arctic Circle and transported to New York Harbor. Professor X always suspected the monster was real. And also an android. But now he wants to examine it to see if it's a mutant because Roy Thomas doesn't know what mutants are. In this book, this interview book that I was reading, Roy Thomas still in the 2000s is like, yeah, I'm not sure if Super Adaptoid is a mutant or not. No, he's not. He's a robot.
Can I say, at this point, I am fully bought in. Professor X mentions that he believes Frankenstein was actually a work of nonfiction, and he mentions Mary Shelley by name. He's not he's not suggesting that there's any other fantastical element to this. Everything that we know it exists, but Frankenstein was real, and Mary Shelley was sworn to secrecy. Yes, absolutely, I'm bought in. Please give him laser eyes.
This is confirmation bias at its best, right? Because, like, okay, turns out he's right, but he had no reason to believe this, right? There's no reason that he should have thought. That is like, it is like the people who are just paranoid, and then it turns out that one of the millions of crazy things they believed was true.
Yeah,
and they're like, I knew it. No, you didn't. You didn't know it because you didn't know any of the truth or reasoning behind it. You didn't have any reason to suspect that. You just guessed.
It's such a bold choice.
Okay, so at the City Museum, Dr. Powell is lowering the temperature against the government's instructions and his colleagues' warnings. I think they mean raising the temperature. I think they basically they mean like lowering the air conditioning or the freezer settings, but they say lowering the temperature. The X-Men show up outside and at Xavier's telepathic command. I just want to note that Xavier uses his telepathy to make this command. Marvel Girl slams a guard into the wall and they rush into the museum to find that the monster has come alive. Each X-Man in turn tries to attack the monster, but it's too strong for them. Scott determines that it is, in fact, an android because his I-beams bounce off of him when the monster almost kills him. But Jean saves him at the last minute. He zaps them with I-beams of his own, the monster does, and then stomps away to pursue his, quote, goal, leaving the unconscious X-Men to take blame for wrecking the museum.
Thank you for giving Frankenstein laser eyes.
Angel follows Frankenstein's path of destruction through the city and alerts Professor X, who then uses telepathy. I just want to note that. Uses his telepathy to steal a Pan Am helicopter. They trace him to a freighter and beat up a bunch of sailors, and Professor X, again using his telepathy, holds them in stasis instead of explaining because there's no time for that now.
Of course.
Beast finds Frankenstein and a big fight breaks out. It knocks out the monster, knocks out all the X-Men one by one, telling them that nothing must keep him from his goal, and then starts going for Professor X, who slows him down with mental bolts, and then awakens Iceman to freeze him. Despite having been frozen in the Arctic Circle for a century, this ice makes him explode.
All right.
Yeah.
Hang on a second. He's been frozen in the Arctic for 100 years. He is terrified of being frozen solid again. Very reasonable thing to be afraid of.
Yeah.
And so he tries to fight it so hard that he blows himself up. It's very tragic. I don't think you're giving it the weight that it deserves.
It's a parallel to what we'll see with these backup stories in a couple issues.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Then Professor X tells everyone that Frankenstein was a robot made by colorful aliens to help those aliens make contact with the human race. But the robot went berserk. So the aliens chased it to the Arctic Circle and just left it there.
Matt, I hate to correct you again, but for a very specific reason, I have to.
Okay.
These are aliens that sent their own android to Earth to explore if we were a friendly people. And then the story of Frankenstein happened, and I hope you're familiar, but Dr. Frankenstein takes him up to the Arctic Circle and does leave him there. So it is a tragic story. These aliens just go through the same motions. It's not Dr. Frankenstein. It's aliens.
So none of that happens on panel. What you're trying to say is that everything in Mary Shelley's Frankenstein was true, except for how Frankenstein came to be.
Yes.
And you're just saying that's implied by Roy Thomas's narrative. He doesn't say any of the stuff you just said.
The narration, I'm just talking too much, but the narration at the end does explain that, like, their purpose was for him to be their envoy, their liaison to humanity. So I guess he's kind of splitting the difference where...
So you're saying if we read in between the lines, right there, where Professor X says he became a menace, that's where the entirety of Frankenstein, the plot of Frankenstein, not the narrative of Frankenstein, happens.
Yes. Yeah,
okay.
Exactly. In this 2-panel recap, in between those 2 panels, the plot of Frankenstein happens.
Okay, all right. But still, it doesn't make sense why the aliens leave him in the Arctic Circle while they're just, let's leave him there. And they fly away. And then when it was revived, so explains Professor Xavier, the X-Men's colorful costumes reminded him of the aliens, so it made him attack them. Which isn't what happened in the story, but whatever.
Yeah.
The end, by the way.
The reason that I wanted to make that correction, Matt, is because this is not a layer that the story of Frankenstein needed.
I know!
This is they're telling the same story, just with the X-Men.
This is so much of, like, this idea of the sci-fi authors of the time being up their own asses about how we're true artists. And some of them weren't. Some of them legitimately were. Like Isaac Asimov was a true, brilliant writer writing literature. Yeah. So was Ray Bradbury.
Philip K. Dick was putting out 5 books a month at this point.
A third of those books were really true literature.
Yeah.
And Kurt Vonnegut was starting to write, right?
Sure.
So... like, these are sci-fi authors who are making literature. Then you got guys like Roy Thomas.
Tortured genius.
Who is not. Who is his writing... He's like, if I reference Frankenstein... like, this is his brilliant idea. As he's sitting there in bed thinking, like, I'm a tortured genius. He's coming up with this idea of, like, what if Mary Shelley's Frankenstein was really an android left by aliens?
With laser eyes and magnet boots.
Magnet boots? At one point, Iceman can't move him because he's got magnet boots. What the... like... This is what Roy Thomas is like, man, I'm trapped here in this bullshit medium comics where I could be writing true literature. Like, what if Frankenstein was secretly a robot left by aliens?
Do you think when Frankenstein accidentally killed that little girl, he did it with his laser eyes?
Are they allowed to use Frankenstein?
So... I'm glad you asked, Matt. Frankenstein has a long and fascinating copyright history.
Okay.
The book Frankenstein's Monster, who I'm just going to, from here on out, refer to as Frankenstein.
Yeah.
The book version of Frankenstein, public domain. You can do whatever you want with that. However, in 1931, Universal made the Boris Karloff Frankenstein movie. That, I believe, enters public domain in 2027. But right now, they will sue the shit out of you for a Frankenstein that has bolts, green skin, a big forehead, a scar, and a flat top black haircut. So mostly like Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein, or the Munsters, or any Frankenstein reboots that you've seen since then. Those are owned by Universal.
Oh!
Other versions of Frankenstein have to be... there's one of the popular... There's plenty of interpretations of Frankenstein where he's just some ripped dude with weird skin and looks a little deformed, maybe some
like this
scars. But I don't, or like the, sorry, I thought you were looking at a picture. Yes.
I'm just looking at a picture of my neighbor. Like this
like
guy.
This guy. Ripped, weird skin. This Frankenstein, the Universal Frankenstein, was actually at the center of a Supreme Court case around home video recording and fair use laws when they first started releasing Betamax, the precursor to the VCR. And you could conceivably record a showing of Frankenstein on TV onto your own device and own it for your own viewing that way. And the Supreme Court decided, hey, that's okay. That falls under fair use. One other fun little fact, the funny Frankenstein was probably most popular from SNL sketches where he doesn't actually really know how to speak and he just says, fire bad.
Yeah.
That was taken to court as well, center of a big lawsuit, but succinct Frankenstein is fair use for parody.
Interesting. Okay.
Real
all right.
Weird.
And I mean, this is not the last time the X-Men come into contact with Frankenstein, right?
Yeah. He's a Marvel regular.
Hey, Pat?
Yeah.
How come when Marvel Girl is just hanging out with the professor in his room, she's wearing her whole costume and mask and everything?
I think
sex stuff.
Looks
me too. I really think so too.
No, I think it looks cool. It's hip. It is a mini skirt. It is a fun new mask. Everybody else's new costume is essentially just new colors.
Yeah, we should describe these, actually. Yeah, do you want to describe their new costumes?
I guess they're not...
All right, well, Cyclops is what will become basically the Cyclops costume in various forms forever. It is yellow gloves, yellow boots, yellow underpants, and then the rest is just blue all over. A blue skull cap covering his head, and then is a thinner yellow visor. And various formats of that will be Cyclops' costume.
Yeah, Cyclops is pretty iconic.
Mm-hmm.
Beast is in essentially the same costume, but he complains about the arms being tighter, which is fair. He's got huge arms.
Yeah.
And they just replaced the yellow with red.
Mm-hmm. Iceman looks the same.
Iceman looks the same. He complained about it.
He gets new boots and gloves, and the X on his belt is new. But other than that, he's just the same.
I guess that's pretty iconic. He remains this way for a long time.
Well, yeah, he gets spikier as time goes on, but he's basically this forever.
He's very smooth right now. Warren is wearing a yellow shirt and like bright yellow shirt and bright red suspenders and pants, and his wings fly out the back. He's got a blue mask over his head now.
Like a blue, one of those spiked masks, like Scarlet Witch, like face and bread kind of masks. And
this looks awful.
And he's got black and red striped armbands and yellow underpants outside of his. Yeah, it is. It's funny if Jean Grey was like, "Hey, I thought I was thinking of you when I designed this and handed you this. What does Jean Grey think of you?"
Well, we know not much, right?
She's not into him romantically, at least.
Yeah. And he's kind of the dick on the team.
Right, and they get into several arguments in this series of issues.
Right. Jean, however, is probably the biggest change, right? Her mask is not all that different. It's just yellow now, but it's still got that sort of spike, like half butterfly look to it.
Yeah.
And then she's wearing a green dress that has a very low cut top and a very high cut skirt.
And this yellow and green become her colors for, again, basically ever. after this.
Iconic costume, although I think they make her hemline a little lower in the future. This is...
Yeah, her costume changes a lot, but it's the yellow and green that stick with her. So, Pat...
If you're about to take me to the next issue, it is not time yet.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, couple of
Feels
things, couple of moments. It's not, believe it or not.
Okay, well, it feels like it.
Number one, Bobby has a good line here for once. As I believe it's Hank is training in the danger room, he says he's got to look out for those force beams I just turned on because they will knock you clear into next year's dictionary. This one tickled me. I don't know why.
It's pretty good. That's pretty good.
And then there's a moment, so they get to the museum where Frankenstein is being kept. So they get to the museum where Frankenstein is being kept.
Yeah.
The guard says, "Professor Xavier, so nice to see you again." And Professor Xavier says, "Thanks, guard." That is that old money mindset. He does not need to know the help's name.
I don't need to know your name. Thanks, butler. Thanks, servant. Thanks, underling.
Finally. Huge fight, X-Men versus Frankenstein on a Navy, or it seems like a Merchant Marines ship, maybe. They do a shit ton of damage. That thing is torn up to hell, barely still floating. The X-Men leave, Frankenstein leaves, the professor erases the entire crew's memories. How are they going to answer for this?
Yeah, they wake up and they're like, why is our ship completely destroyed?
Our cargo.
Why did he have to erase their memories? It's not like their identities were revealed.
He doesn't want them knowing that the X-Men fought Frankenstein. The world's best kept secret that Frankenstein is a non-fiction book.
Hey, if we're exhausting our notes before we move on to the next issue, I want to say, Roy Thomas, stop calling me a tiger.
Yeah. Relax, dude.
Yeah. In your note, you're like, hey, why don't we move on to the next scene, tiger? Leave me alone. I'm just reading here.
Yeah.
Knock it off. Leave me alone. I'm just trying to live my life.
Stop hitting on me.
Stop hitting on me. I've had phones in for a reason. Pat, want to tell us about issue 41?
No, you know what? One more thing. We've exhausted our notes on issue 40. Issue 41 now strikes the subhuman.
Ooh.
Face front, because Stan Lee's creative combo of Roy Thomas and Don Heck has done it again. Done what? Don't bother asking George Tuska, inker, or Sam Rosen, letterer, because they'll never tell.
What? Yes, they will. Yes, they're all joined together to tell the story. What are you talking about?
Release date December 12th, 1967. Cover date February of 68. We open with action as a large, stout, hairy man attacks a subway car. He's got pale yellow skin, red eyes, a golden mane, and is scantily clad in purple. He takes the train head on and stops it. But guess who's on this train? That's right. Bobby Drake and Hank McCoy with their dates Zelda and Vera. They sneak off.
Vera's still hanging on, even though she absolutely hates Hank.
Not keeping that a secret. They sneak off to get into costume and investigate what caused the train crash, but as soon as they reach the front of the train, they're attacked by this trollish creature. A fight ensues during which Hank calls the creature Grotesk. The creature mentions that he has lost all of his memories and he will be adopting Grotesk as his new name. Just as Hank and Bobby are starting to get overwhelmed, the monsterman dips into a tunnel and seals off the entrance with an immovable rock. Bobby and Hank decide to rush back to the mansion to tell the rest of the gang, regretting that they will once again not be able to enjoy their break in the city. We find Grotesk deeply beneath the city, trying to recover his memories, which he does with absolute minimum effort. Turns out he forgot that he was a conqueror prince of the underworld, leading a military force through caverns deep below the Earth's crust, raising whatever societies they found. But there was a sudden nuclear disaster, and his castle, which had existed there since time out of mind, collapses around him. Following that, any of his people that survived died shortly after of radiation poisoning, and now he is alone. His only
How does he know? How does he know? How does he know it's radiation poisoning? How does he even know what radiation
Well,
is?
I mean, they have a society down there. They're not.
Yeah, but not a society that's discovered the science of
You don't know that.
radiation.
They
All right,
they
well,
had some weird robot costumes.
you're right. Okay. All right. They made. Yeah, you're right.
Grotesk decides his only choice is to find the device that caused this nuclear disaster so that he can use it to destroy the overworld. We briefly cut to a lab up here on the surface that has invented a nuclear oscillotron to create earth tremors, which, as it turns out, is the device that collapsed Grotesk's world. We cut back to the mansion where the professor is being exceptionally cranky. He's lecturing Jean, Warren, and Scott about their danger room session when Hank and Bobby rush in to tell them about Grotesk the subhuman. The professor will have none of it because they should not be entering the danger room in street clothes, Matt, and issues each of them 2 demerits. No city trips for a month.
They're adults. You can't keep doing this, Professor X.
He tells Bobby and Hank to shut up about their news. He won't hear of it and rolls off with Jean. Grotesk, meanwhile, continues to plot against the surface. The scientists continue to debate whether the nuclear oscillotron is a good idea, but suddenly Professor X has changed his tune. He knows about Grotesk after reading Bobby's thoughts and is now sending the X-Men boys to find him, urging Jean to stay back. They're able to find Grotesk's lair, but he's already left to kidnap a scientist for questioning. Bobby and Warren go back to the mansion to tell the professor, where Jean tells them that the professor is unavailable, which Warren is livid about. Feels that Jean and the professor recently have been hiding something, and that they clearly consider that thing to be more important than the safety or the lives of the X-Men. Scott and Hank, meanwhile, hang back at Grotesk's lair to wait for him to return, which he does with a scientist in hand. Looks like we're about to get another fight. To be continued.
Pat, will you excuse me for a second as I roll right into issue 42?
What?
We open with a reminder that Angel, this is issue 42, If I Should Die, edited by Stan Lee, with Roy Thomas writing and Don Heck drawing, inked by George Tuska, lettered by Sam Rosen. Released on January 9th, 1968, we open with a reminder that Angel is berating Jean over her and Xavier's perceived lack of concern for the X-Men. The professor returns, commands Jean to keep Warren and Bobby from leaving the mansion while he scoots off again. This does not de-escalate the situation. Meanwhile, Hank and Scott are just barely holding their own against Grotesk in his lair. After some fighting, Grotesk remembers he's trying to find the tremor machine and uses his chest plate stud to create a wall of solid fog and gets away. Hank and Scott return to the mansion for a sit rep, and Jean reveals she's being telepathically commanded to keep them at the mansion too. Everyone objects, but then Jean gets a new command. Bring the whole team to the professor at once. Cut to Grotesk smashing through the science lab where the nuclear oscillotron is kept. He grabs the scientists and demands that they use it to destroy the Earth, just as your kind destroyed my race. The scientist reveals himself to be Professor X in one of his elaborate disguises. This angers Grotesk, who throws him to the ground. The professor
defeats him right there.
Yeah. The professor uses his mind bolts to try and stop Grotesk from activating the nuclear oscillotron, but Grotesk manages to activate it. The X-Men arrive at the lab right on time. If they can defeat Grotesk, they can turn off the machine while it's still warming up. A fight ensues that involves solar orbs, more chest plate discs, and Grotesk spinning Warren above his head really, really fast. The professor is able to do some serious mind blasting on the machine and get it to stop warming up. Grotesk goes to attack him, but the machine blows up. Grotesk is dead, but the professor is still breathing. However, he reveals that his recent secret experiments are actually him trying to treat a terminal illness. he has been unsuccessful and wanted to go out in a blaze of glory by taking out Grotesk himself. After revealing the truth, the professor dies in Warren's arms. Our villain is dead, but so is dear Charles Xavier. Professor X is dead.
Yeah. Which they told me was going to happen on the cover.
Yeah.
On the cover, they say, Professor X dies for real. No tricks. This is happening. Like they're...
Yeah, let's really remember that. Not a hoax, not a dream, not an imaginary tale. This is real. Let's remember that.
Yeah. I've got it in my mind. I don't get that look off your face.
And remember how many times, just remember how many times Professor X in front of us has used his telepathic powers before he died. And now he's dead. Now he's dead. Now it's over. Okay.
I remember.
So how do you feel about Grotesk?
I think he rules. I think he is pretty high concept. Now, this is not the first underlayer of the Earth that the X-Men have been to.
Yes, they fought.
This has happened again recently.
This is a combination of the plots of the Tyrannus plot and the Frankenstein plot just smashed together.
Right. This guy, so if you just see, he's stout, but he's large, right?
Okay.
He looks like an offensive lineman, a Jason Kelsey, if you will. Well, I think we cut the Jason
Who's
Kelsey
that?
stuff out of the episode.
Describe his costume, though.
Okay, so he is wearing... We'll start from the top. He has a beautiful head of golden hair.
Okay.
That drapes over his shoulders and kind of pops out of some other places. He looks like a very hairy man.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
He is wearing a bright purple, appears to be leather vest that has a lot of holes in the sides, like showing off his ribs.
Okay.
And also just completely open down the center, so you can see like the hair that kind of
you can see
glows off his chest. Below that, he has I would say like a sumo style belt. It's gold.
Okay.
It's got some sort of emblem on it. I think it's supposed to evoke a bug, but it's not actually like a picture of a bug. Okay. Underneath that belt with the little flag hanging down, he is wearing purple scaled underwear. It's like an armored underwear. No pants. He's got, you can see his legs in their full muscular glory. And then he's got some purple boots on.
Yeah, that's Grotesk. He's got a tiny little stone hammer that he uses to hit guys.
Yeah, he's also extremely strong. The first thing we see him do is stop a train.
Mostly he uses it. I say he uses it to hit guys, but mostly he uses it to wave in the air.
Yeah, he likes to. I mean, he doesn't seem like he wants to fight. It seems like he's kind of forced into these fights until he remembers that he was a conqueror prince and that his whole purpose in life is to raise and kill and conquer.
I love how also when Grotesk appears, Roy Thomas tells us that he surprises an amazed trainman.
Yes, trainman is the way it's written, I believe.
How else? What are your feelings on this little two-parter here?
So Don Heck clearly getting more comfortable with the X-Men.
Yes.
I think these last couple of issues, he's drawing them. There's more fluid action, more dynamic poses. Even the emotion on their faces is showing through a little more, and like he's drawing them a little more consistently. Mm-hmm. It's not quite so awkward. I appreciate that he's getting there. I do love also the argument that they're having in the mansion between both issues when Warren is flipping out on Jean and when the whole team is arguing with Jean about how she's trying to hold them back. Right. This is good drama. This is them in a tense situation, exercising their social dynamics. As much shit as we give Roy Thomas, he understands the X-Men's personalities and how those personalities interact at different adrenaline levels, which is pretty cool. One more, I'll give it one more compliment.
Okay.
I was fooled this time by Professor X's disguise. Had no idea that he was that scientist until he revealed himself. He got me.
He gotcha. I have so many questions about Grotesk. First of all, they say that their society is responsible for causing volcanoes. When they get in fights, it makes a volcano happen.
Yes.
And then, which
New
is
lore.
absurd, but that is that good lore or is that just absurd?
It's just new.
Why does he forget who he is? What causes him to forget who he is? And then how does he suddenly remember?
Yeah, this is not well done, but it seems like his castle collapsed on him.
Yeah.
He came out with his memories.
Okay. Yes.
Because he discovers all his people dead.
Yes.
Or dying of radiation sickness. Maybe it's the radiation. Maybe he just goes into fugue states from the cancer that he has now.
And then just every now and then he has moments of lucidity where, well, I guess manic episodes where his memories are available, but he can't really control his actions and he just starts attacking shit.
He becomes
like a train.
pure force. Exactly.
Yeah.
Let me pose a question to you.
Okay.
What do you know about Professor Xavier's solar orbs? That Angel enters battle that becomes their Deus Ex Machina, the way they're able to slow down.
It really feels like Don Heck just drew some weird circles in Angel's hands that were firing bolts.
What's this guy do again?
And then and then Werner Roth and then Roy Thomas is just like, I don't know what that is. I don't know what that is. He's like yelling at his friends. He's like, or at the other people in the office. He's like, I don't know what that is. Don won't answer the phone. I don't know what to put here. I don't know. They're solar this guy lives underground. They're solar orbs.
He hates the sun.
He hates the sun. It makes him die. The end.
Don, it's Roy. Call me back.
It's a cute little I think this is a cute little story. I don't think there's much going on here. Grotesk continues to reappear throughout Marvel Comics here and there.
Does
for
he?
Like decades. Yeah.
Awesome. He is a maniac. And yeah, it's clearly mental illness, which is maybe why I'm a little why he's got a little soft spot in my heart for him.
Yeah. A lot more holy Hannahs in this one though.
I know. Scott starts saying, I thought Scott might give it up after he heard the military saying it because he hates the US military so much. But no, that did not deter him. Sincerely, the last 2 pages where they're kind of the explosion happens on the third to last page. We're essentially just told that it kills Grotesk, and the final 2 pages are 6 panels of them kind of realizing Xavier is dying and then him dying, and then a final single panel full page of them all very solemnly carrying a dead Professor X home, I guess. And there's too much Roy Thomas narration on it, but the final few panels where like they hear his final few breaths, they kind of accept that he's gone, and then they sadly march out is really well done. Like there is emotional impact there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do think Roy Thomas ruins it a little bit.
Yes, but Don Heck is drawing the heck out of it.
Okay.
I can't believe it took me that long to get there.
So
we do get, sorry, Matt, before you move on to I can hear it in your tone.
Okay.
We are promised the next issue, the one that we'll get to at the top of the show next week, features Magneto.
Whoa, Magneto finally back. He's been gone for what, like 20 issues?
As soon as they lose the professor, too.
Wow. I think we're also coming to the end of our Roy Thomas run.
Oh, thank God.
Wait, don't
I just
get
need
too...
a break. I'm sure he's coming back. I need to take a breath and hear someone else describe the X-Men.
We'll find out if you think that whoever comes next is good.
Is an upgrade.
is an improvement or not.
All right, Matt, I think it is time for us to talk about the mini issue broken up over the course of these 5 issues.
Yes. Yes. So this took place issues, 39, 40, 41, and 42.
Yes, although it ties into the Professor X's X-Men origin from issue 38 as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think all the X-Men origins are going to tie into each other, but they all are their own sort of separate stories.
So we'll start with issue 39. This one is called Lonely Are the Hunted by Roy Thomas and Werner Roth. This picks up from the footage of Cyclops disintegrating the air conditioning unit from a man called X in issue 38. He runs from a mob and hops a freight train, realizing he can't return to his orphanage. Meanwhile, Professor X looks over the potential mutants with Agent Fred Duncan and settles on finding Scott Summers at the Sunset Orphanage. However, when they call the orphanage, they find out that Scott went on a trip to New York and disappeared. The FBI begin a search for Scott while Xavier visits his optometrist, who originally turned him into the feds, and tells him about fitting him with ruby quartz glasses to fix his glowing eyes and headaches. Hopping off the boxcar, Scott finds a group of hobos around a fire who invite him to eat with them and then try to mug him. But they're interrupted by the police. The police recognize Scott, pull his glasses off, which causes his beams to fire, and the police go running. Scott then wanders through the woods until he finds a shack that seems to be calling to him. And inside is a man who claims that he, too, is a mutant.
He reveals himself to be Jack Winters in The First Evil Mutant by Roy Thomas and Werner Roth. He has psychic powers and the power to teleport, which he does with himself and Scott just before 2 police burst into the shack. Professor X using Cyberno.
Oh my God.
It's his precursor to Cerebro, he tells us.
Sure it is.
Also sees them disappear on his monitor. Later, Jack takes Cyclops into a nuclear power plant and explains that he got his powers in this very plant in a radioactive explosion that turns his hands into pure diamond. So not a...
Of course.
Then. Now he calls himself Jack O' Diamonds. He brought Summers here to help him recreate the explosion and turn his whole body into diamond. But just then, Professor X shows up to stop him.
In issue 41, we get the Living Diamond. Xavier manages to stop Jack O'Diamonds in his tracks until Jack uses his diamond hands to bring down the whole ceiling on everyone. He and Scott just escape, and Scott is worried about the man they just buried under the rubble. But Jack still needs him because apparently this was actually the wrong building, and they actually have to go break into another one, actually. Scott comes along trying to reduce the harm Jack is trying to cause, and Jack gets into the cyclotron. Back at the power plant, Professor X has used his mental bolts to protect himself from the falling debris, and he heads towards the cyclotron building. He gets there and makes contact with Scott just in time for Jack O'Diamonds to have turned himself entirely into the Living Diamond. Got a second name for him.
Issue 42, The End or the Beginning. Roy Thomas and Werner Roth tell us that after transforming into a whole diamond man, the Living Diamond realizes he's moving slower and kind of woozy. However, Professor X can no longer penetrate his mind. He and Scott flee and lock themselves in some nuclear room with some nuclear machine.
Right.
Obviously, the living diamond breaks in to kill them both, but Professor X projects the ability to control said machine into Scott's mind. Scott turns it on and turns it on the living diamond, who, in trying to resist, explodes.
That'll happen.
Scott worries he's a murderer. He is. But Professor X soothes him and takes him back to his mansion, where he gives him a costume and a visor and the name Cyclops. Wow.
That's dramatic.
It's a lot. So Scott's orphanage was in Nebraska. He was on a trip in New York, but his optometrist was in Washington, D.C.
Okay, I've thought this through.
Okay.
Yes, he's an orphan in Nebraska.
Okay.
He needs the finest optometrist in the world who works in Washington, D.C.
Okay. He's also from Alaska. So just to add another thing in there.
Oh, all right. I'm sure we'll get there. But at the time, even now, not a ton of direct flights from Nebraska to DC, right? You would want to probably lay over in New York, fly straight east, and then maybe he had a day or two to hang out in New York before his flight from New York to DC. And that's where we find him. Isn't it fascinating to you that his optometrist is the one that turns him in? His optometrist is like, oh, this boy's not right. I better call the FBI.
Right. Hold on. Sorry. You're right. I just searched for a span of 2 months, and there are no flights from Omaha, Nebraska to Washington, D.C.
I know my flight patterns.
Holy cow. Why? Why? Where does it fly to if not? Okay, anyway. Strange.
Wait, so this is a huge, going back to the optometrist, a huge breach of doctor-patient confidentiality, right? Yeah. He, of his own accord, it's not like the FBI even came around and asked and he gave into pressure. He just said, I think this guy's a mutant. I should call the FBI. His license should be revoked. But on top of that, no wonder Scott doesn't trust optometrists. He doesn't want to see the one
at the
back after that one big fight at the emergency room.
Yeah.
This guy's going to fucking turn him into the feds.
Here's the origin of ruby quartz, though. This is, I think, the first time they mention ruby quartz, right?
Yes, I believe it is. I was very excited when I saw those words, ruby quartz.
Yeah. Also, they fixed Cyberno. Apparently, it was the precursor to Cerebro.
Yeah, pretty good retcon. I'm not falling for it. He was using he called the same machine Cerebro and Cyberno. Maybe it was a slip of the tongue because he used to use Cyberno way back in the Cyclops origin days.
I love how Jack O'Diamond's motive is legitimately it's the exact same story as the Mimic, right? Oh, I got my powers in an accident. Now let's recreate. I need you to help me recreate the accident so I can get my powers double
powerful.
Yeah.
Also, he has such a strange combination of lab accident powers. He has local telepathy. It's got very limited range, but he does have some telepathy. He can teleport.
Yeah.
A la the Vanisher.
But also local. Also local.
Yeah,
also not
very short distances. It's the Misty Step in D&D, if you will. And then also his hands are made of diamonds, which is the last part of his power that he reveals. Like, before he said my hands are diamonds, you've already got a lot of power, dude. This is, you can do some shit.
But he's not a mutant, right? Like, he's a mutate, right? Like, just like Spider-Man.
Yes, or Mimic.
There's a lab accident. He got his powers. Hey, Pat, I don't know if you caught Roy Thomas's subtle literary techniques here. But did you notice how we're supposed to know that Jack has the exact opposite sort of morality of Scott? Because Jack's name is Jack Winters. Well, Scott's name is Scott Summers.
No.
This guy, again, you're right. This guy should have been writing the next Pride and Prejudice.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
he has some really good lines. He calls the professor Egghead Come Lately.
Good one.
He calls himself Jack O Diamonds. He insists that the apostrophe between O and Diamonds is there, so it's like an Irish last name. And then here's the cream on top. He tries so hard that he explodes. An ending.
Just like our boy Frankenstein.
Yes.
He does come back a few times, which doesn't make a lot of sense, but he does.
Oh. Okay.
Weird character.
Really sort of lived the perfect story here. I don't think he needs to come back. Scott gets over his guilt for murdering someone pretty fast. Right? he says,
he's like, all right, I guess this is just my life now.
Oh my God, I've murdered someone. And then the professor comes along and puts his hand on his shoulder and says, no, you didn't. And he says, oh, I guess, you know what? You're right.
All right, sure. Yeah. Okay. Do you think this was the inspiration for Emma Frost? Like, it's interesting that this early on, they're like, once you've turned into diamonds, I can't penetrate your brain with telepathy.
Yeah, I mean, it must. The only other time we see somebody turn into diamond form is Emma Frost, right?
And it's the same sort of thing. And I mean, I highly doubt that Grant Morrison read this story before creating Emma Frost, but I do wonder if some nerd-ass editor is like, look, if you're going to do this, we've already set a precedent.
By the way, Mr. Morrison, I don't think this would actually work.
CB Sobolski takes him like, is like, hey, can we have a quick call? Because
we got a CB Sobolski voice.
All right, Pat.
Yeah.
Do you have a steals and deals for us this week? All right, before we get there, how do you feel about this arc? Factor 3 wrapped up?
Okay. I got a few thoughts. Number one, end of Factor 3. I really appreciate that they took a full year to sort of seed this story.
Yeah.
Let some of it flesh out, then go away from it while still dropping some information in the occasional panel.
Mm-hmm.
And then they saw it through to a conclusion. The conclusion is fucking weird. I don't know that that's what they had in mind a year ago, that it was some alien and that they were going to recruit all these evil mutants, but
definitely not.
They stuck to it. They saw it through. I can appreciate that.
Right.
I have the same thoughts as last week as far as like they're kind of just treading water in their superhero progression, but they're showing a lot of growth and impact on their personal lives. And that's sort of where we're getting any progress that we want. I love the move to 2 stories per issue, a la Strange Tales or the Tales of titles from Marvel. Roy Thomas, I think, needs those boundaries. Like I think he would write forever if he didn't have to keep it to 30 pages or whatever.
I think the Grotesk story is fun. I don't, I have a real soft spot for things that add to continuity, I guess. And the Grotesk story doesn't do that at all, which knocks it down a little bit in my book. Below the Factor 3 story, but it's definitely more of a tightly written and maybe even smarter story than, not that either of them are smart stories, but smarter story than the Factor 3 story. But I like the Factor 3 story, I think, more.
Yeah. Tickles your X-Men history bone.
Glands.
Ew.
It tickles my X-Men history glands and expresses them all over its pages.
It drains my X-Men history glands.
Especially those sexy tentacles. I mean, sorry, those sexy tentacles. No, I mean those hot. Sorry, what did you want to say?
Here's a thing that I'm missing, not just necessarily in this arc. It's been for a little while now. Cyclops is never successful with his blasts. he is constantly using them to like maybe puncture a hole in a cage they're stuck in, or pop a lock off a door, could get a gun out of someone's hand. It's been a long time since he has just like walked up to a bad guy, unleashed his blast, and let them fly off, be injured or defeated by it. Give the man a win.
Right. I think one of the problems is that he's so his blasts are so powerful that they have to keep putting limits on them, right? I think I complained about that last episode, is that is one of the ways that they constantly undermine Cyclops, and it makes him, I mean, legitimately less interesting. Patrick.
Yes.
Do you have a steals and deals for us this?
I do, Matt. I truly could not decide between a few, so I'm going to give us 2 today and leave one. Hopefully it comes up in a future issue. Number 1, here's my runner-up. It's just really cool. Frank Zappa and the Mothers of Invention have taken out full-page ads in these X-Men comics to promote their new album, We're Only in It for the Money. I'll read you some of the copy here. It's very Frank Zappa. That same wonderful, wholesome, and American teen rock combo that is responsible for Freak Out and Absolutely Free. Thrilling LPs I'm sure you will want to own, boys and girls. Thrilling, clean fun. Cleans you, thrills you, cleans and thrills you. Fun, expensive. You must buy all of these products now. And then they include a coupon that you can fill out and send to them for a free copy of We're Only in It for the Money by Frank Zappa and the Mothers of Invention.
I think this is one of those, I think this is the editors at Marvel understanding that a large portion of their audience at this era is hippie college kids.
Yes.
And not wanting to quite admit it out loud. They still want to project that the audience is kids, but it's very much, like there's a very strong college-aged contingent.
Yeah. I mean, I haven't mentioned this, but I've seen some like male pattern baldness cure ads. So they know it's not just young people.
Okay.
But also just it is if you're a fan of Frank Zappa at all, whether it's the music or the personality, this is extremely Frank Zappa. It's in full color too. It's really fun stuff.
It is interesting. Yeah, that it is a weird thing to see. This seems like an ad you would see in 1980s indie comics, but here it is in a 1960s mainstream comic.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
That is just our runner-up, though. Here is one that blew my mind. I couldn't find any information about it, so let me know if you can, Matt. But another little classified ad, one of those pages that has 35 to 50 different ads on it. This one is a small one. It's got a large picture of a dollar sign taking up about a third of the ad itself. And then next to it says, "Ideas? We pay you. Send us your idea on any subject. The wilder, the better. It could make you rich. We are ideas brokers with contacts in business, science, and industry. Automatically, we will send you a professional evaluation of your idea. If it's good, we pay you big money. Companies like Ford, Midwest Research, IE, DuPont need thousands of ideas a month. Do they need yours?"
What the fuck?
Much like the Frank Zappa record, I put this on Steals and Deals because technically it's free. You can send them as many ideas as you want for the cost of a postage stamp.
Wow. Wow. Yeah, I can't even begin to... I don't even know how one would begin to research this.
I know.
Send
I
us
tried.
Your idea.
So I've heard stories. This is just me conjecturing. I have heard stories, and we've seen sort of a more modern version of this in 90s television commercials where it was like, you could be an inventor. Have you always had a great idea? Send us your information and we'll send you a free catalog. to develop your invention and then send it back to us, and we'll let you know if it's good or not. And essentially, they are getting themselves in on the patents for new products when people come in and claiming ownership. Like, by sending them your idea, you are giving them ownership of your idea. They're obligated to pay you because of what they're saying in this ad if they use your idea, but there's no actual share listed here. They just say, we'll pay you a whole bunch. They're getting their recurring money, and they're paying these inventors a one-time, or idea men, a one-time sum for that idea.
Also, there's very little accountability. Like, there's very little to identify them, and it's a PO box.
Yes. Yeah, this could very well just be one crazy person that wants to explore the world of ideas.
We could do this. If you have ideas, email us.
MutantMenacePod@gmail.com. Any subject, the wilder the better.
MutantMenacePod@gmail.com. Any idea, literally any idea you have about anything. And hey, if it ends up being something that makes us rich, we'll pay you. Guaranteed, 100%. We will use your idea and we will pay you.
If it's good.
If it's good.
The specification here is, if it's good. We would have made great snake oil salesmen. Did you ever think about that? You and I have a good patter.
If anybody, again, wants to email us about anything at all, mostly probably X-Men or the podcast, mutantmenacepod@gmail.com. You can also find us on Instagram @mutantmenacepod. Thank you to Krills Wilson for our intro and outro music. Thank you, Julia Selly, for the amazing voice of Trish Tilby that opens our episodes. Pat, do you have anything to say to our listeners?
Well, just the same thing that we always say to our listeners at the end of the episode.
Okay, so remember, a heavier dose of that stuff should make me hard as diamond.
And always remember, zap.